You know what most guys expect after a period of no contact? They expect you to come back needing something. They think you're going to reach out because you've been sitting there in your feelings, wondering what happened, feeling lost, hoping for closure, craving reassurance. That's what most men are prepared for. That's the narrative they've built in their heads. She'll reach out eventually. She'll ask me why I disappeared. She'll want to know if I ever cared. She'll need answers. And you know what? That expectation is their comfort zone. That gives them control. Because if you come back needing something from them, it confirms the story they've already told themselves, that they still hold the power, that they're still in control of the emotional dynamic. But the move he won't expect is you coming back with nothing to ask for, no begging, no explaining, no emotional deep dive, just stillness, clarity, peace. When you've done no contact right, not as a tactic, not as a game, but as a true healing process, you come out the other side with a kind of emotional self-sufficiency that's incredibly powerful, because you no longer need him to explain anything. You're not looking for a justification. You've already sat with the discomfort. You've already asked yourself the hard questions. You've already done the work that people normally expect someone else to do for them. And when you show up like that, when you reach out, not with open wounds, but with calm confidence, that is a moment he will never see coming. It's confusing in the best way. He won't know where to place you, because the version of you that he thought he left behind no longer exists. That version would have chased. That version would have demanded a conversation. That version would have handed him the emotional upper hand. But the woman who shows up after no contact, the one who doesn't come with emotional debt, that woman is someone he has to recalibrate around. He doesn't know how to predict her moves anymore. And that unpredictability, that's where your power lies. You see, most people, not just men, but people in general, rely on patterns. They find comfort in knowing how someone will react. If they ghost, they expect anger. If they pull away, they expect pursuit. If they hurt you, they expect you to either lash out or come back needing resolution. So when you break that pattern, when you return not to reignite the fire, but simply to acknowledge the experience and move forward, it sends a very different message. It says, I've already processed this. I'm already whole. Imagine getting a message that doesn't say, why did you leave? Or did you ever care about me? But something more like, hey, I just wanted to say, I hope you're doing well. I've learned a lot over the last few months, and I genuinely wish you the best. Now, that doesn't mean you're trying to get back together. It doesn't mean you're pretending nothing happened. It simply means you've reached a level of peace that's rare. And because it's rare, it's memorable. And the irony is, when you no longer need closure, that's when people are most tempted to give it to you. When you don't go digging for answers, that's when they start to feel the silence more than they ever did before. Your absence starts to speak. Your stillness starts to echo. Your strength, without a single word, becomes the loudest message of all. It's the opposite of what he prepared for. And when that happens, something powerful shifts. Not just in how he sees you, but in how you see yourself. You start to realize that closure was never in his hands to begin with, that you were never waiting for him. You were just waiting to remember your worth. That's what the no contact period gave you, that space, that clarity, that reset. So now when you show up, you're not there to rehash the pain. You're not fishing for a second chance. You're not hoping to convince him of anything. You're just showing up in your truth, peaceful, calm, whole. And that version of you is magnetic because it's not chasing. It's not striving. It's not emotionally indebted to him. It's simply present, centered, and powerful. That's the energy he won't be ready for. Because the truth is, most people don't expect you to outgrow the version of yourself they mistreated. They think they've seen the full range of your emotional palette. They think they know how you'll react. But when you evolve, not out of spite, not out of ego, but out of genuine growth, it breaks the mold. It forces a new dynamic. One that he can't control, one he didn't plan for. And that the move he never saw coming. Let me tell you something most people don't realize after no contact. If you're going to reach out, or if you're even thinking about allowing someone back into your life, you have to understand this. The version of you that walks back into that dynamic cannot be the same version he walked away from. Here's the thing. Most guys assume that if they wait long enough, if they give you space, you'll eventually come back the same. He thinks you'll come back still wondering what went wrong, still needing answers, still hoping that maybe this time he'll get it. But if you want to truly shift the dynamic, if you want to do the one thing he won't expect, you have to become someone he has to earn. He expects you to be passive. He expects the same emotional pattern. He expects that you'll be waiting at the door, even if it's disguised behind a casual message. But that's not who you are anymore. You've taken space, you've done the work, you've gone through the ache of detachment, and you've come out the other side. Now is the moment where you reintroduce yourself, but not with words, with energy, with a calm certainty that says, I'm not here to pick up the broken pieces. I'm here because I've already rebuilt myself. It's not about proving anything to him. It's not about showing him you're better off without him. That still makes him the center of the story. This is about showing up from a place where he no longer gets the privilege of the old version of you, the one who tolerated the bare minimum, the one who confused attention with affection, the one who made excuses for inconsistency. This time, you're showing up as the version of you who knows her value, not in theory, but in practice. The you who no longer entertains half effort, the you who has boundaries, not walls, and standards that reflect a life of self-respect. And here's what's powerful. You don't need to say a word about it. You don't need to post cryptic quotes or tell him you've changed. He'll feel it. He'll feel it in how you speak, in what you don't say, in how little you try to impress him. He'll feel it when you don't rush to fill silences, when you don't cling to the moment, when you don't try to steer the conversation back to what we had. Because the you he's talking to now isn't trying to win him back. She's simply living her truth, and that truth is magnetic. When he realizes that he's no longer the emotional priority in your life, when he sees that your happiness isn't dependent on his validation, something shifts. He starts to realize, wait a minute, I used to have access to this. I used to be the one she shared her heart with, and now she's just here, calm, collected, and completely untethered to my approval. That's the moment the dynamic flips. That's the move he didn't expect. He didn't expect you to come back without the emotional neediness. He didn't expect to feel like he had to step up. He didn't expect that he'd have to work for your attention again. But that's the difference between someone who's just taking space and someone who's evolving during that space. It's tempting to use no contact as a tactic, as a strategy to get someone back. But when no contact becomes a period of growth, real internal growth, you no longer want what you used to want, at least not in the same way. You don't crave the old version of the relationship. You're not just hoping he'll say all the right things. You're watching actions. You're reading energy. You're tuned into how you feel around him. Does this still align with who I'm becoming? And if it doesn't, you're willing to walk. That's the ultimate shift. When you show up and you're willing to walk away, not because you're angry, not because you're playing a game, but because peace has become your baseline, that's when he knows you're different. And I promise you that difference is undeniable. So the move he won't expect, it's not about saying the right thing. It's not even about reaching out or waiting for him to reach out. It's about who you are when the moment comes, when you finally speak again, whether it's a text, a call, or seeing each other face to face. He's expecting the old you. The one who made space for him even when he wasn't showing up fully. The one who tried to smooth things over. The one who deep down just wanted him back. But that woman is gone. Now he's faced with someone who's clear, grounded, emotionally intelligent, and completely unattached to the outcome. Someone who isn't here to convince or chase or negotiate her worth. Someone who makes him realize, if I want to be in her world again, I have to earn my place. And trust me, he won't expect that. He might expect you to come back cold, bitter, defensive, maybe even a little needy. That's the image he has in his mind, because for most people, that's the pattern. After a period of silence, the typical move is to return with emotional baggage. Maybe there's anger still simmering, or a hidden hope of rekindling things. Either way, he's expecting something reactive, something that validates the idea that he still has emotional control. But when you come back with peace, when you show up calm, grounded, and radiating self-respect, that's when you completely disarm him. He doesn't expect it, because he knows what he left. He remembers the version of you who was trying to make it work even when it hurt. He remembers the you that was giving more than receiving. So when you return, not with a plea, but with poise, it throws him off balance in the best possible way. Now, I'm not saying you need to go out of your way to prove anything. That's the key. You don't prove, you simply are. You let your energy speak before your words do. The moment you message or bump into him or share something online that reflects your current life, the goal isn't to make him jealous. It's to subtly show, I'm good. I didn't just survive, I evolved. And here's the thing, positivity doesn't mean you fake a smile. It doesn't mean you pretend everything was okay. It means you've genuinely taken the time to heal. And you found your peace, not in his absence, but in your own presence. That's rare. Most people use time and distance to ruminate, to replay old memories, to wonder what could have been. But when you use no contact as an actual growth period, not a waiting room, that's when you come back different. Now picture this. He hears from you or sees you out somewhere. And instead of drama or emotional overflow, he gets warmth, grace. You're genuinely happy to see him, not in a take me back kind of way, but in a I wish you well kind of way. That kills the ego, because the ego was prepared for chaos. It was bracing itself to be begged, to be blamed, or to be worshipped. Instead, you offered peace. You offered a mirror that reflects back maturity. And that mirror says, this is who I am now, whether you're in my life or not. What's most powerful in that moment isn't what you say, it's what you don't say. You don't ask, why did you treat me like that? You don't bring up the late night texts he ignored. You don't relive the final argument. Why? Because that version of you, the one who needed those answers, she no longer runs the show. The woman who's standing here now doesn't need closure, because she became the closure. And this doesn't mean you're pretending it didn't hurt. It just means you've stopped letting the hurt define your worth. That's what he doesn't expect. That the same woman he thought would spiral without him has built a life she actually enjoys, maybe even more than she did when he was in it. You see, most men don't actually fear losing you physically. What shakes them is realizing they've lost emotional access to you, that even if you were to speak again, it wouldn't feel the same. The dynamic has shifted, the power balance has recalibrated. And that warm, kind, self-assured energy you now carry, that's no longer his to influence. That's yours, entirely. This is where the magic happens, when he sees you in this light, glowing but not for him, smiling but not because of him, thriving but with no trace of resentment. He has to sit with the version of you he never got to appreciate. And he realizes that the door he once casually closed now feels a lot heavier to reopen. Because now, it's not just about whether you'd say yes again. It's about whether he's even earned the right to try. That's how you make the move he won't expect. Not by trying to be someone else, but by finally being yourself, the self that wasn't fully expressed when you were bending to fit into the relationship. Now, you stand tall in your own frame. You don't need revenge. You don't need attention. You just need to show up in your peace and let that speak volumes. Sometimes the most unexpected move is silence dressed as confidence. Don't bring up the past. Let him sit in it. It's such a simple idea, but it's powerful. Because here's the thing. When we come out of no contact, there's often this intense urge to unpack everything. To say, let me tell you how much you hurt me. Or, here's everything I've been thinking about these past few months. And on the surface, that feels like closure. It feels like honesty, but in reality, it's often just another way to reconnect through pain. And that is not the connection you want. See, what he expects, what so many people expect, is that when someone breaks silence, they're coming with an emotional invoice. They're coming to say, hey, here's what you owe me. Here's what you need to answer for. And when you do that, as valid as those feelings might be, you end up anchoring yourself to the version of you that still needs something from him. That version is rooted in the past. And if you bring that version back into the conversation, he gets to sit comfortably in the role he used to play. You're back in a dynamic he already knows how to navigate. One where you're emotional and he's distant. One where you're explaining and he's just listening. Or worse, not listening at all. But imagine this instead. You return after time apart and you say nothing about the past. You don't rehash the breakup. You don't list the ways he let you down. You don't bring up the promises that were broken or the ways he failed to show up. You simply arrive in the present moment, grounded, self-assured, and forward-focused. That silence, that absence of complaint or confrontation, that is what throws him off, because now he is the one sitting with the past. He is left wondering, why isn't she bringing it up? Does she not care anymore? Has she moved on? Has she become indifferent to what we were? And that, my friend, is where the shift happens. When you don't bring up the past, it creates a vacuum, and vacuums beg to be filled. He starts thinking about the last conversation you had, the last thing he said, how he left it, how you left it, how you left it. He goes back to all the things you might have said. And he begins replaying them in his own head because you're not giving him a script to follow anymore. You're not giving him cues. You're not guiding the emotional journey. He has to face his own mirror without your narration. And make no mistake, that's silence. No, that's not avoidance. That's not suppression. That's not you being weak or refusing to speak up. That is restraint in its most powerful form. That's you saying, I've already felt what I needed to feel. I've processed it. I've grown from it. I don't need to dig it back up for you, because the real power lies in what you don't say. When you talk about the past, especially early after reinitiating contact, you risk giving him the false impression that you're still stuck there, that you're still emotionally tied to that version of the relationship. But when you don't bring it up at all, you communicate something so much deeper that you've already released yourself from it. And if he wants access to you now, he's going to have to meet you in the present, not pull you back into the mess he helped create. You see, emotional growth isn't always loud. It doesn't always announce itself with dramatic monologues or heartfelt confession. Sometimes it's in the way you smile without needing to explain why you're okay. Sometimes it's in the way you let the silence do the talking. He might try to poke at it. He might say things like, you never said how you felt, or I'm surprised you're not more upset. And that's when you get to hold your power, not by jumping back into the narrative, but by simply saying, I've already made peace with it. Full stop. No follow-up, no explanation. It's about emotional minimalism, doing less while saying so much more, because what you withhold can be just as meaningful as what you share. And when a man sees that you're no longer emotionally invested in reliving old pain, he realizes he doesn't have that kind of hold on you anymore. That's where the regret creeps in. That's when he starts to reflect, because you're not trying to make him feel guilty. You're not demanding closure. You're not chasing an apology. You're just done. And when you're done, you're free. You're not tied to who he used to be or who you used to be with him. You're in motion. You're evolving. You've become a woman who doesn't need a conversation about the past to validate the growth she's already lived through. That's what he won't expect. He won't expect the stillness, the calm, the lack of emotional volatility. He won't expect to meet a version of you who doesn't need to win because she's already won within herself. He won't expect you to let him sit in the discomfort of his own reflection while you move forward unbothered and unattached. So don't bring up the past. Let him feel its weight. Let him carry what he gave you to carry. And while he's doing that, you walk forward in peace. That's the real move. You don't need to give a whole monologue about how much you've changed. You don't have to send a long message spelling out how you've healed, evolved, or stepped into a new version of yourself. That's the trap most people fall into, thinking that transformation needs to be announced. It doesn't. In fact, the most powerful changes you'll ever go through are the ones that don't need to be spoken. They're just felt. When someone re-enters your life, especially someone who's used to having a certain level of control over you emotionally, they're not expecting you to show up calm. They're not expecting centered. They're definitely not expecting lightness. They're expecting drama, questions, unresolved emotions. They're expecting to find you in the exact same emotional place they left you in. And when you show up differently, when you walk back in without needing them to validate your worth or even acknowledge the past, that's when they pause. That's when they start questioning their assumptions. Let me tell you something. Showing that you've leveled up is not about changing your hairstyle, getting in shape, or curating a better Instagram feed. That's surface level. That's the version of transformation that people sell you because it's easy to package. But true change, the kind that's magnetic, comes from something much deeper. It's in your energy. It's how you carry yourself. It's how you no longer react to things the way you used to. It's how you don't need closure anymore because you gave that to yourself. That's what catches people off guard. You want to know what really throws him? It's when he reaches out and you're genuinely at peace. Not pretending to be at peace, not putting on a performance, but actually there, in a place where you don't need anything from him anymore. That kind of peace is disarming, and it's not something you can fake. You can't replicate it with carefully crafted messages or timed replies. You get there by doing the real work, by facing the hard truths, by letting go of what you thought the relationship was going to be, by choosing yourself every single day when it would be easier to chase the ghost of what you lost. So when you finally do make contact again, whether by choice or circumstance, don't fall into the trap of trying to prove your glow up. Let it speak for itself. Let your calm be louder than your words. Let your self-respect take up more space than your need to be understood. And when he tries to prod at the past, when he wants to know why you went quiet, what you were thinking, what changed, you don't owe him a detailed report. You don't owe him anything that takes you out of the energy you're in now. Because here's the truth. If you've really done the work, you'll realize you're not coming back to the same dynamic. You're not walking into this with the same version of you that once tolerated breadcrumbs, confusion, or emotional inconsistency. You've outgrown the conversations that go nowhere. You've outgrown trying to decode mixed signals. You're no longer interested in proving your value to someone who should have seen it from the start. And when that's the place you're operating from, everything about your presence shifts. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't shrink. You simply exist in your truth, and that truth, that self-assurance, is what commands respect, even from the one who once took you for granted. And I know some people worry, what if he doesn't see how much I've changed? But that's the wrong question. The real question is, does it even matter anymore if he sees it? Because if your change is authentic, you'll realize it was never about getting him to notice. It was about you becoming the person who no longer needs his notice. That's the shift. That's the evolution. When your life starts reflecting your standards, your peace becomes your protector, and you stop letting other people's attention define your value. That's what he won't expect. He won't expect you to be whole. He won't expect you to be happy. He won't expect you to be free. And the most unexpected move of all is showing him that your world didn't pause without him in it. That's when everything changes. The most unexpected move you can make after no contact is not running back with your heart in your hands, hoping for something to be different. It's not about throwing the doors wide open and waiting with bated breath for them to walk back in and finally say all the things you've longed to hear. No, the real curveball, the thing that throws someone completely off their game, is when you leave the door just slightly ajar, not flung open like a desperate invitation. Because here's the truth, when someone loses you, when they feel the cold space where your warmth used to be, they expect that if they knock, you'll come running. They expect access. They think she's just one message away. They believe the moment they miss you, you'll be right there, available, waiting, hoping. That expectation is often the foundation of their confidence. But when you go no contact, not as a game, but as a genuine act of self-respect and healing, you send a clear signal. I'm no longer participating in something that wasn't serving me. That silence isn't just empty space. It's powerful. It's you reclaiming your peace. And what comes next matters just as much as that silence. So when the time comes and you reappear, not because you need something, not because you're chasing closure, not because you're secretly hoping they've changed, but simply because you've grown into a new version of yourself, your energy shifts. Everything. What they don't expect is your neutrality. They don't expect to hear calm in your voice. They don't expect kindness that isn't bait. They don't expect the absence of emotional charge, because most people return either with fire or neediness. But you show up cool, composed, complete. You let them feel your absence even in your presence, and then you leave the door just slightly ajar. You're not saying, come in, let's start over. You're not saying, prove to me you've changed. You're simply acknowledging, I've changed. You're no longer who you were when they left. You're not operating from the same script. Your self-worth isn't tethered to whether or not they come back. You can say something like, I genuinely hope you're doing well. Life has shifted a lot for me these past few months, and I feel more like myself than I have in a long time. I wish you well on your journey. That's it. No bitterness, no invitations, no expectations, just peace. And that is incredibly disarming, because people expect drama. They expect resentment. They expect one last argument, one more emotional conversation. They prepare for either resistance or submission, but they rarely expect poise. They rarely expect someone to return from the silence with grace. When you don't fight to be understood, when you don't ask for clarity, when you don't reach for the past with trembling hands, that's when they start to wonder. They wonder who you became without them. They wonder if someone else has your attention. They wonder if you still think about them, if you ever look back. And here's the powerful part. It doesn't matter if they wonder or not, because you're not acting for a reaction. You're living from a place of truth, and that truth doesn't need to be defended. Leaving the door slightly ajar means that if the universe ever does bring them back into your life, it won't be out of obligation or manipulation. It'll be because the foundation is right. It means you're not waiting at the threshold. You're just not bitterly slamming it shut either. You're at peace either way. That kind of emotional maturity is rare. It's attractive. It's magnetic, because it shows you're not afraid of love, but you're not starving for it either. You're not blocking the possibility of something better, but you're not anchoring yourself to something that wasn't working. You're standing in the middle, grounded, unshaken. And if they do come back,